Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Treknopod. You may notice that I am solo today. Yep, this is, it feels so weird to be recording a solo episode, but here I am, all by my lonesome. To make me feel like Linda's here in the room with us, I've got my glasses on. And to make me feel like Vactor is here with us today, I've got my hat on, because, it's a signature look for Vactor. Vactor was out of town when we were initially going to record this, and now he's at work. And so a lot of things this past week has been kind of crazy. A lot of us had a lot of things going on. Poor Captain Linda is not feeling well and has been under the weather for the past week. And so she's not able to join us. And Vactor was out of town, and now he's working today. And meanwhile, me, I don't love doing solo stuff. It feels weird because you're so used to like the group dynamic, as far as like bouncing ideas off each other, hearing how everybody, how they felt about the episode. And honestly, I don't like to hear my own self think, or speak for that matter. So it's kind of like, all right, we're going to do this, but it's not going to be your typical format. Okay. So, but I will say, thank you so much for joining us. Yes, this episode is out a little bit later than usual, but that's just because this past week has been kind of crazy with illness, traveling, and everything else. I had like an eye infection. There was a lot going on, which is the other reason why I'm wearing my glasses and not wearing my contacts. But I also have my drink, which we don't want to see Aquaman. Who cares about Aquaman? We got Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman in honor of Vactor Loves Comics as well. So cheers to those that are missing. One for me and one for my homies. Okay. So we are talking about episode 8, episode 8, which was called The Life of the Stars. And this was an interesting episode because it was weaving a lot of things. A lot of storylines came together. We saw the culmination of sort of the aftermath of the Miyazaki disaster. We saw the situation with Terima and her kind of coming back into the fold. We've got situations going on with Sam. We've got, there's so much happening in this episode. It's kind of crazy. But I think we'll start off with talking about the return of Sylvia Tilly from Star Trek Discovery. Now, if you're like me, then that means that you loved Discovery. And I don't want to hear anybody talking crap about Discovery because it's actually a great show. And it got better and better every single season. I feel like it just exponentially, the quality of the show got better. And I was there for it. I saw it through. I remember when it was like kind of being treated as like the flagship of CBS All Access when they first launched that streaming service, and Star Trek Discovery was leading the charge and trying to sort of, bring in subscribers. And it was the first Star Trek show in, I forget how many years, but a lot of years, because the last time we had seen anything was Star Trek Enterprise. So it's just crazy that there was so much of a gap, which is ironic because just in the news the other day, Starfleet Academy has concluded its production of season 2, and they do not have any other shows currently in production, which means that they are ending like basically like a decade's worth of television, of always having something going, something in the machine, down the assembly line. So this is an interesting time to be a Trekkie because we're experiencing something where who knows what's going to be next. Will we get another season of Starfleet Academy? Will we get something different? Will there be a massive gap in new content from Star Trek? Gosh, I hope not. I would love to see Star Trek back in theaters as well. Gosh, I just think there's so much more to discover, cueing the conversation of Tilly. But yeah, so we get Tilly back. She's a visiting instructor. She was saying something in the episode about her being with the third year Academy cadets over in the Beta Quadrant. And so she was coming in and helping out. And she was brought in specifically to help these cadets who are really struggling to get along after the events of the Miyazaki situation. And that was such a tragedy. We lost Bobby, and that was really tough. That really had a major effect on the crew, on these cadets. And, I think we have to keep in mind as Trekkies that these are not Starfleet officers. These are cadets that are just learning. You can't assume that they're going to be able to process this kind of trauma, these situations, with the grace and the experience of a Starfleet officer, right? So I think that's really important to kind of keep that in the back of your mind and remember these guys they're teenagers. They're playing teenagers on the show. And if you were a teenager on the bridge of a ship that was experiencing this kind of stuff going down, you would probably not be keeping your cool. So, they brought in Tilly, and she has this unusual method that she's using on the show to sort of help the cadets process their trauma. And she's using theater and storytelling. Specifically, they are using a play chosen by Sam called Our Town. Now, just a little bit of backstory about myself. I actually used to do community theater for many years. And I know that Captain Linda, who's one of our podcast co-hosts, also no stranger to the stage. Man, it would be so fun if she and I got to like act in something together. I would love that. But the play itself, I've never done this one. I have read bits and pieces of it. I've never seen it all the way through. But now after watching it on this episode of Starfleet Academy, it really makes me want to go and check it out. And it's so funny. You know how like art imitates life? I was walking downtown through downtown Olympia the other day. I was picking up some pottery that my daughter and I had painted, and I passed by, there was like a theater district area that I was kind of passing through, and there was a theater company that had their whole season like up on a wall. It was kind of like a mural. And one of the shows that they're doing, I want to say in November this year, is Our Town. So that's my opportunity. I'm going to have to go check it out in Olympia. So that'll be fun. But anyways, so we get the return of Tilly, and she's got this non-conventional approach on how she's going to reach these cadets in a way that makes them not feel like they're really in therapy, if that makes sense. They're emotionally fractured after this training mission aboard the USS Miyazaki. And obviously, they're dealing with the loss of a friend. And I would say essentially episode 8 is the fallout episode. It's the episode where these emotional consequences finally surface. So what I would say with that is it was really interesting to see it unfold. And I love when I think art therapy is so interesting and so important. And I love that in this show they were utilizing it. Because we're talking about a play that for them is so far removed from their daily lives. Like for us, Our Town is it's not terribly far off for us from like what daily life would be like. But for people living in the 32nd century, it's unfathomable. It's a completely different way of life. So I think that was really interesting to see how well these things line up. And in addition to these cadets with dealing with the Our Town experiment that's being conducted by Tilly, we've also got another storyline happening, which was it was a doozy. I don't know about you, but for me, I've been dealing with some stuff and it's been tough. I think I briefly mentioned it as sort of like a throwaway, but about maybe we're looking at 2 weeks now. About 2 weeks ago, I was laid off. Nothing I had done as far as my job. It was just I'm a contractor. I provide consulting services, and the group that I was providing those consulting services for no longer needed not just my help, but anybody within my firm. They ended that contract, and so all of us are in a position now where we're sort of scrambling, trying to find more work. And so I was already kind of in kind of a depressed place, but then this episode happens and it kind of, I'm already kind of like feeling emotional. And then this show brings the doctor in a big way into the episode. And we've got him and Sam. And, I had said it earlier on when we were talking on the podcast about how I really hoped they were going to circle back to the doctor, because we had seen his behavior in the prior 7 episodes and he'd kind of been pretty standoffish, and I would say also very emotionally cold, almost numb and desensitized. And you could kind of understand why, just for the standpoint of being a hologram who lives sort of outside of time, right? And all of his friends, everybody that he knew on Voyager is dead, and that's just kind of a crazy thing. Like I mean, we've seen that kind of trope played out before in other franchises, other storylines of just like the immortal character. Like we've seen it on Highlander and all sorts of things. Like it's a really intriguing concept. Like I'm like thinking of the song by Queen, "Who wants to live forever?" Right? But who really wants to live forever? Because how lonely must that be? And I think that for the Doctor, you know, he has become somebody who has just witnessed so much loss. And we're not just talking about Voyager, but like think of the other things that the Doctor has been a part of. His program has been involved with Prodigy. His program has been involved various other places. And he's had to institute, like, I mean, I remember at the beginning of this season, he talked about he added like an aging subroutine so that, he can, I guess, I mean, obviously it's an explanation to explain why he looks older on the show, but it makes sense. But then what they do is they take it to another level and they bring in a storyline from Voyager in regards to him losing his daughter, a holographic daughter, by the way. And a little bit of context. If you're not familiar with this episode, the Doctor creates a holographic family and he wants to experience what it's like to have a family. But the holographic family he makes is perfect in every way. They get along. There's no dysfunction. They're kind to each other. His wife makes beautiful dinners for them, and his kids are perfectly well behaved, and it's all just so perfect. And he invites some of the crew over for dinner. And B'Elanna specifically is like kind of perturbed by the whole experience. She's like, "Doctor, this is not real. This is not how people behave. This is not how a family is." She's like, let me mess with the programming a bit. And so she does some changes to the program. And then he comes in and kind of re-meets his family and finds out what it's like to really be in a family where dysfunction exists. And, people have their own egos and motivations and, a sense of independence, and it doesn't flow as smoothly. And there is a fair amount of tragedy too, because his daughter contracts. I mean, again, they're still holograms, so it's not like it's as real can be, right? For them. But for him, it was as real as anything else. But his daughter contracts an illness and dies. And it's a very kind of tough episode. And I'm a dad. I have two daughters, ages 5 and 3, and so being a girl dad, I can't even imagine the idea of losing a daughter. And just a little bit of context, because I feel like it's just you and me right now. I don't have the other co-host here with me, but I lost my sister when I was 15, and we were twins, and she was killed in a car accident. And in that sense, my parents did have to experience similar loss in losing their daughter. And I can't, like, to this day, they are different. My parents are not the same parents that they were before my sister passed. And I know that there's no way that they could be the same. And the same goes for the Doctor. The Doctor lost his daughter and he was never the same. And that's what this episode sort of explores, is how all of the loss, especially his daughter, has weighed on him and made him kind of push people away a little bit. And we experience that mostly with Sam, who is a unique individual, being a photonic being and the closest thing to the Doctor that exists, but even different from the Doctor because she doesn't need a mobile emitter. She is not being projected on the USS Athena. She exists as energy, and in a way that's not even fully explained on the show, but I don't care. I don't need that explanation. That's fine. But she has been glitching since the issues on the Miyazaki. And we find out after Ake, the Doctor, and Sam go to the Maker's homeworld, the world of Cask, which, a quick shout out for my comic book friends. When they arrived outside of the planet Cask, I could not help but, I mentioned this to Vactor, I was like, did you think that this looked a lot like Bizarro's Earth, like from Superman? Because Superman, the Bizarro world, is like a square version of Earth, and Cask is sort of had like a cube format to it. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's like Bizarro world. I don't know. Anyways, that's just me. I thought that was kind of cool. But we find out that Sam, when she was made as a photonic being, she was given she was like imprinted memories to make it seem like she had a childhood, but she was essentially born yesterday. Like she didn't actually live through those experiences. And because of that, the makers kind of set her up for failure because she only had the, how do I put this? The footprints without the actual miles traveled. She was without the means to process and cope with the trauma that she experienced on the USS Miyazaki, to the point where Sam, as we know her, Sam 1.0, dies in this episode. Thankfully, the Doctor sacrifices or realizes that he is in a unique position to properly nurture Sam 2.0 from birth, from inception to her teenage years, or to whatever age she is. I want to say it's like 17 years or something like that, so that she can have a proper childhood, so she can grow up with the proper coping skills that you would gain just naturally through the organic experience of childhood and development and maturity, right? And so the Doctor stays on Cask for 17 years. Now, time passes differently, so it ends up only being, I think, a couple of weeks. But for him, it's a solid 17 years. I just think that's so amazing. And witnessing sort of his heart, it was almost like the Grinch a little bit, where the Grinch's heart was two or three sizes too small, right? And you see like his heart just begin to grow. And you can just see, like, I think they even do it thematically in the episode where it goes from black and white to color, showcasing just the progression, the development, and also the melting of his heart, like to really, I guess, feel something again and get to experience being a father again. And I just thought it was brilliantly done and made me bawl. I was crying so much. During this episode. And I think it was kind of funny. I had submitted a service request for some light fixtures that needed special light bulbs that weren't something I was supposed to replace in my apartment. And my the maintenance worker from my apartment arrived just as I was finishing watching this episode for the first time. my eyes were red. there was like tears streaming down my face. He's knocking on the door wanting to come in to fix this light, and I'm like trying to like wipe my tears away, compose myself. I let him in and say hi, and I just know that he could tell that I was I was emotional. Like, I was trying not to make it look like it, but he's like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. Oh my gosh, it was so awkward. Typical Captain Shoff, if you ask me. But it was a very emotional storyline, and man, I loved every second of it. And that sort of juxtaposed against the other cadets going through their trauma processing with the Our Town analysis that they were doing, and also essentially like a rehearsal. They were performing it, but not for anyone, just for themselves. And I just loved it. I think it was fantastic. It did a lot for character development, did a lot for characters to address their own shortcomings or their connections to each other, whether it be Caleb and Tarima, or we got some great stuff from Occam in this episode. I think we got some great stuff from Genesis and from Jaden and Darum. And I just felt like this was such a solid episode. And honestly, the entire season has been wonderful. But having Tilly come in, I think I wanted to say this about the whole Tilly scenario. When I first met Tilly, and when I say that, I mean, like, when I first saw her in Discovery, I did not like her. And I think I just was like, oh man, she's the try too hard officer, wants to be everybody's friend, too happy, too joyous. But then we're also seeing Tilly through the eyes of Michael Burnham, who had a unique, relationship with Starfleet based on being kind of labeled a mutineer and the whole situation. And so we're looking at Tilly as being like way over the top. And I have to say that when Starfleet Academy first started, I kind of felt the same way about Sam. But very quickly, Sam grew on me, and I was like, you know what? I love Sam. And I think Carice Brooks is doing an amazing job as Sam, both Sam 1.0 and 2.0. But same thing with Tilly, Mary Wiseman. She grew on me too. It took a lot more time for Tilly to grow on me, but I would say over the seasons, over the years, she really did kind of cement herself as a very vital person of the crew and represented the heart of Discovery. So I just think it was fantastic. We had a lot of art imitating life imitating art. It was a truly, truly, truly wonderful episode. And I really enjoyed it. I would have loved to have the opportunity to discuss it in greater detail with my co-hosts, Captain Vactor and Captain Linda. But I will say that by this being just a solo podcast episode, it kind of gave me a chance to kind of dig in a little bit into making it a little more personal, and just say man, I love this. I love this stuff. And the haters for this show who says that Starfleet Academy is not Star Trek. Come on. What could be more Star Trek than these kinds of philosophical episodes that take almost Shakespearean concepts and apply them to intergalactic interpersonal relationships? It's so Star Trek. It couldn't be more Star Trek. So I loved it. And I hope you all loved it too. This is a unique position to be recording an episode about episode 8 when we've already seen episode 9. But we will be talking about episode 9 in a couple days when we all reconvene on the podcast. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me, and as I discussed episode 8, The Life of the Stars. And man, this one will hold kind of a special place in my heart for sure. Star Trek, man. There's nothing like Star Trek. There really isn't. I kind of feel like Starfleet Academy, just like Voyager, is becoming my comfort Trek, if that makes any sense. We all have a comfort Trek. Might be a different show, but we all do have a Star Trek TV show that just really we turn to when we need that hug, that Federation hug, you know what I mean? So anyways, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back in a few days to discuss episode 9, which was a doozy of an episode. Very, very exciting. But until then, I'm going to do what Linda does. I could never duplicate it, but I will certainly try. Live long and prosper. Thank you so much.